This is To the Front. Tools for today's top agents.
Welcome back to episode number 25 of To the Front. This is going to be a solo episode, but it is going to be an important episode. You don't want to go anywhere because I'm going to tell you today the single piece of best leadership advice I've ever received. Ever. Out of all the things that I've ever gotten from mentors and coaches and parents and heck, my wife from time to time, this has been the most important. But I want you to think about your business for a second. No matter whether you're an insurance agent, baker, you run a daycare business, whatever it is, where you are working with people. My question is, do you have a defined leadership model? Like a defined leadership model. Now, no, I'm not asking you, do you have leadership systems and operational systems and all of the different systems that you would put into place to make your business, your family, your relationships go? I'm not asking you about your systems. I'm saying, do you have a way that you want to lead that will get your people across the finish line? If not, today I'm going to tell you the single and the best and the only leadership model that I think you will ever need. So to start that, I want to ask you a question. If I had to ask, what is the traditional, the normal setup for any company, right? Tell me the organizational chart for a company. How would you outline it? You would probably say, well, Adam, probably at the top is the owner, and the next below that maybe it's like the CEO or the president or the vice president. In fact, maybe if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my screen, but maybe you would describe the traditional leadership model as this. The top is CEO owner, maybe then goes to your vice president. Maybe under your vice president, you've got managers, and then possibly there's team leaders, supervisors, employees, and then maybe at the bottom are sort of your contractors, your vendors, the people that help you do the work that are not on payroll. This is about how 99% of all businesses run. This is their leadership model. And in this model, it is the job of everyone at the bottom to serve the vision and the idea and the dreams of the person at the top. And what the person at the top needs, what they want to do, what they want to achieve, that is what's important in the company. And whether companies would directly admit this or not, this is the model of most companies. It is a right side up pyramid model. But what if I told you that 99% of organizations, companies, families, relationships are wrong? What if that leadership model actually is the worst model? Because what it means is that everybody is there to serve one person. Well, here today, I'm here to tell you that I learned a different kind of model a few years ago, and it's changed how I run all my businesses, how I serve all my employees, and it literally has changed the culture of our business. And because it's changed the culture, this leadership model, it's made us better. It's made us more profitable. It's made us sell more. So let me tell you this model. In fact, the only leadership model that you will ever need for your business is what I like to call the upside down pyramid. So in other words, is that the top person in the company is actually at the bottom. And their job, all right, as the famous Simon Sinek would say, who is he is a renowned speaker, author, coach, he would say the role of the leader is there to serve those under their employee or under their leadership. In other words, if you are the leader of your business, of your company, of your organization, your job is not to be served, but maybe instead your job is to figure out, how do you serve the needs of the people that are on your team? And believe it or not, that this is not just a little cutesy way of trying to make a staff meeting or a pitch to a new potential employee better. This is a model that when businesses put it into place, they literally see their entire company's transformed in whatever management system you're part of. And that system is this, is that to be a great leader, you've got to first be a great servant. In other words, if you wake up every day and say, my leadership style, my leadership system, my leadership philosophy is I'm going to go in and I'm just going to serve those people that are quote unquote beneath me. In fact, I'm going to look after their needs and their wants and their hopes and their dreams. And as long as I'm serving them, check out what happens. They perform better. Then they take care of the person under them, all the way up to that baseline employee. When they feel served, guess what they do? They serve your customers better. When they know that the leaders and the owners have their back and their best interest and they're walking in caring about them, they actually will serve your customers better. Why is that? Well, at the instinct of all of us, at our most basic instinct is what? It's survival. And going way back, it's the survival really of the fittest, is that some of your basic needs are also the most selfish needs. That's food, that's water, that's shelter, that's companionship. But what do all those traits have in common? All those things have in common are, well, those are about you. And I will tell you, if you leave it up to your natural instinct, you will want to serve you. But the problem is that doesn't work to build healthy cultures of growth in a business. In fact, what is counterintuitive, what is counterinstinctive is actually the only leadership model you'll ever need. Why? Because when people feel taken care of, they take care of business. You take care of your people, they take care of your business. But instead, what we do over and over and over is we lord it over them. We say, we're the boss. Here's what we want to do. You serve me or the vision or whatever it is you're going after. And then people feel like what? They feel like a commodity. And when people feel like a commodity, people feel like a number, they will start to search for a place where they don't feel that way. So that's why you might have all the turnover. That's why you might have all of the frustration. That's why you might have a difficult time keeping people, because they feel like a number, because you're leading like a right side up pyramid. So how do you do that? Adam, I get it. I need to turn the pyramid upside down. I want to be a great servant of my people. Well, how do I actually do that? Well, I'm going to give you 3 simple tips that I installed in all the businesses that I run that have made a difference in terms of how I retain people, how I take care of people, how I serve people. And the first one is this, is that when I walk up to them, I ask them how they're doing, not what they are doing. Think about the powerful change of words there. Rather than walking up to your team members or whoever you're in charge of and say, hey, what are you doing? Instead, ask how they're doing. How are you doing? And no, not the normal, how was your weekend? How's the weather? That's fluffy, surfacey kinds of stuff. In other words, you get to know them well enough. You ask them, how are you doing? How is your pet that was sick? Hey, I know you were really worried about your mom. How is she doing? You see, when we get in the habit of asking people how they are doing, they feel heard. They feel cared about. And you know what? When you do that, you don't even have to ask what they're doing, because they're going to want to lay it all out on the line for you. Why? Because you've laid it on the line for them. In fact, just try me. Try it for a week in your business. You don't have to believe me or this whole upside down, right side up pyramid type thing. You don't have to believe me, but just give this a try. Whenever you walk around for the next week, don't ask what they're doing. Ask how they're doing. And then guess what? Wait for the response and then respond back. Don't just like, hey, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? There's a lot of people that will glad hand that way. People will see right through that. But truly look at them and say, how are you doing? How are you doing? And let them respond, and you respond back to them. And you won't even have to ask what you're doing, because they will want to take care of you. But the second thing that I do is this, and this is going to sound weird, but go with me here for a minute. Every one of my team members at any of the companies that I get to serve, I ask them a question, and I say this: if time, talent, and money were of no issue, what would you do? In other words, I asked them, what's your hopes and your dreams? Like, if you could do anything, what would you do? And I tell them, you don't need to tell me I would work here, or I would be an insurance agent, or I would, you want to ask them, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Truly tell me if time, money, and talent, because you think about it, those are the three things, those are the three excuses that we give when we don't go after something or go after a dream or try something, right? It typically has, hey, I don't have enough time or to do it, or money to pull it off. And I'm really don't think that good at it. So I can't do that thing. In fact, all of our excuses can be wrapped up in an excuse of time, an excuse of money, or an excuse of talent. So ask your team member, if time, money, and talent were no issue, what would you do? Now you might be asking, Adam, how does this correlate to being a servant leader, an upside down pyramid leader where you're serving the people under your employee? Well, here's what happens. When they answer that question honestly, they have now trusted you with their hopes and their dreams. And what I found is that when you ask them to do that, this is what I then say to them. I say, okay, great. I want to figure out how in your employment here, how we can help you to get closer to that thing. So, for instance, I one time had a team member who said, Adam, if I could do anything, I would spend all my days volunteering at the homeless shelter. I love it. It's my passion, and I don't have time or money to do that. But if I could do that, boy, that would really, really drive my life. All of a sudden I thought, well, why can't I do that? So what did I do for this team member? I figured out a way to say, okay, hey, every other Friday, I'm going to give you off. I'm going to pay you for your time, and I'm going to allow you to go work at that homeless shelter. Now, was that every day? Was that fulfilling the dream ultimately? No, but here's what it meant to this team member. It meant that I actually cared about them over my bottom line. And when you ask the question of time, money, and talent were of no issue, what would you do? What you're really saying to them is that I care more about you than I care about what you can do for me. And when you do that, you're being an upside down pyramid leader. You are being a servant leader. And now your business becomes a launching pad for people. Now, you might be asking, Adam, that's just going to encourage my people to leave and make them discontent in the job that they currently have. No, it's not. I know why you think that, but that's actually not what happens. What happens is that they believe they have a boss that cares about them, and they actually become more content working for you because they know that you care about them in the long haul. And it's going to open up opportunities. Now, let's just say that you do sell insurance, and the person who is with you says, I really dreamed of being a teacher, but I never got my teaching certificate and it just didn't work out. But I really love teaching. Well, you might not be able to help them to be a teacher, but is there something in their office that you could train them to be a teacher of? Maybe this person could be the trainer of, this one specific way of selling or this product line. And every new team member, they're going to have to go through that team member's training course for that product. Well, guess what? You're in a sense fulfilling a little bit of that desire for them to be a teacher. Do you see what I'm saying? When you look after the hopes and dreams of your team members and you figure out, even if they're little ways to help them to achieve that, it comes back 300%, 400, 500%. Even if you were able to help a team member launch into the thing that they would really do if they had time and talent and money were no issue, I can't tell you how much goodwill that will pass. And I bet you that person would find their replacement, and that person would be better than the person that's leading. I'm telling you, whenever you become a launching pad, that's what happens. So that's the number two thing about how to be an upside down pyramid leader. So the first is ask how you're doing that, what you're doing. Two, ask what their hopes and dreams are. And in the phrase of if time, talent, and money were of no issue, what would you do? But here's a third thing. And this is the hardest for business owners. Listen to me, because I think this is so important. If you want to grow your business and if you want to be a good servant leader to your people, that leadership model that makes people want to stick around and who will they will lay their life on the line for you and your visions and dreams, is this third thing is this: no ceilings. Now, what do I mean by no ceilings? What I mean is that you should figure out a way in your business, in your company, to not have any ceilings. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that you figure out a way that they can somehow earn more and more money each year that they work for you, no matter how much they make. No ceilings means that you're going to find out ways that if they want to promote within your business, within your company, within your agency, that you're going to help them to prepare for that promotion. There is nothing worse, I'm convinced, than being in a job that you feel like you've hit a ceiling. I can't make any more money and I can't rise up. And that's going to make your team restless. Not only will they not produce to their highest level, but they will constantly have Indeed or Monster or whatever search engine they use up in another tab, because intuitively, we don't want to be held back by ceilings. So why do we create them in our businesses? Well, Adam, it's because, cash flow and P&L and all the yeah, right? We've all got money issues. We've all got cash flow concerns. We're all trying to balance the books. Here's the deal. You can say no ceilings and have financial issues, or, you may not know exactly where to promote somebody. But I'm telling you, if you spent some brain power to think about how you can say no ceilings, I bet that you're going to find some ways to make that true, right? If it's not like an hourly or salary, maybe it's this. Maybe it's saying, "Hey, listen, I'm going to offer you more commission based upon some piece of elevated selling." Right? That might mean you need to give up a little bit of a piece of the pie, but as long as it keeps your team member from not seeing the ceiling, you're a great servant leader. Maybe it needs to be some other role that you should create in your office, because maybe you're figuring out what your team members' talents are, and maybe there's a person in your office that you didn't have this role in mind, but this person would fit this kind of a role. Well, maybe you need to create a role for a person. You see, so often what we do is we come up with job titles and then we figure out who needs to fill that job title. Well, a favorite author of mine, Jim Collins, in Good to Great, says, no, the best businesses, they just get the right people on the bus or in the office, and then they figure out where they're going to sit. So what if you were just more concerned with figuring out what your people were really good at, and then think about how to position a job title and move that person in? The first ever boss that I worked for, it was actually at a church, and we were talking about money and titles and all things like that. He says, Adam, here's the reason why I love giving titles. He says, because it's a lot easier for me to give titles than it is to give paychecks. And that's true, right? And, yes, we all want to earn more money to take care of our families. And yes, you need to be looking for ways for there to be no ceilings in the way that people can earn money there. But until that point, dude, job titles are free. Crafting a job title and making a business card's what, $50 on Vistaprint? Figure out what your team is good at. Figure out what that team member really excels at, and then create a job title that they can rise up to, right? Don't keep them at the same level over and over and over just because it's easy for you. No, be for them, because people don't want to work in businesses where there's ceilings. They want to have something that they can strive towards. So give them something to strive for. There's very few jobs and businesses in the world where truly there's a ceiling. The only reason there are ceilings in businesses is because we create them. Take away the ceilings. If the concern is about, well, Adam, if there's no ceiling on income, at some point I'm gonna outpace people's payroll and salary with my top line revenue. Okay, well, create a plan where your top line revenue can grow, and then bring your people along inside the growth and make their growth contingent on your growth. That's fine. Just as long as you communicate as that there's no ceilings, then that works. In fact, the phrase that I love to use, I didn't make it up, a lot of people use it, is that when one boat rises, all should rise. So if you create a culture where you're a great servant leader and you're trying to figure out how to take care of the people under your employee, well, a great way to do this is to say, when I do better, how can I make sure that my team members do better? And if that's your attitude, you're going to have team members for life. Since I've instituted the servant leadership model, my turnover has been really, really low. I mean, in some of the companies, none. Now, am I the best leader on planet Earth? No way. No way. Am I perfect? Not even close. Ask my wife. But I will tell you that I feel like I'm getting better every single day at being an upside down pyramid leader, where I am only concerned about taking care of those people under my employee, and then I trust them to take care of my customers. And they do. Why? Because when their needs are met, they then are free to meet the needs of the business. That's the key. When you meet your team members' needs, that's being a servant to them, they meet the needs of your customers. In fact, I have a dear friend, and one time he hired a guy, and through conversation, because he asked how you were doing, not what you're doing, found out that this guy was having a tough time with his budget. He was just living check to check. And so this boss said, "Hey, would you be willing to share a little bit with that with me? I'd like to hear more and see if I can help." Well, this guy didn't have a ton of money just to give this team member, right? But he listened, and what he found out was that this employee was having to like eat every meal outside their home. In fact, the budget for eating out was just blown, right? Spending copious amounts of money eating out. And so he asked, "Well, why?" Well, this team member said, "Well, I really don't have money for pots and pans." Or I haven't even thought about that. So guess what this boss did? He went out and bought the team member pots and pans. Cost him $300 or $400. But what he did is he helped solve a problem for a team member. And then that team member was able to cook and eat at home, and therefore was able to save money and put more money in his pocket, and to help him. And he started to stop. He really stopped living check to check. It could be as easy as that. Be creative. There's lots of ways that you can serve versus just handing them money and groveling. Right? It's helping them solve problems. Now, I want to close this podcast with two more notes. And I want to keep this podcast short because I hope that you'll earmark it, and I hope you'll come back to it over and over again. Two things as you're starting to turn the leadership model to servant leadership. I want to give you two things to think about as we finish. The first is that good leaders don't need to remind everybody that they're the leader. They don't. In fact, you've probably seen leaders or coaches or whoever that they're constantly reminding you that they're in charge. Have you ever worked for anybody like that? You know how that's not fun. They're lording it over you. They're somehow using it as ammo for you to do your job. And if you're like me, that probably didn't help you to do what you do better. It might have made you scared because you feared if you'd lose your job. But the reality is that fear is a horrible motivator. It really is. So the best leaders don't need to remind everyone that they're the leader. You know why people will know you're the leader? Because you're a really good servant, because you're looking after them, because that's what leaders do. In fact, if you looked anywhere in the military, especially in good families, you don't need to point to who the leader is, because the leader is typically the one that goes first. The leader, if it's in military, they're charging ahead first. If it's in a business, they're looking after their needs last, right? Simon Sinek says it this way: leaders eat last. In an upside down pyramid model, you never have to ask who the leader is because it's apparent. It's the one who's serving. Now, when I go, and again, most companies are right side up pyramid companies. I know the leader typically because there's a sign outside of their door, but then they always make it a point to let me know that they're the owner, they're the leader, they're the CEO. And for instance, I don't, out of all the companies that I get to lead, I don't call myself CEO or president. I think that's silly. And because I'm not hating on anybody that calls himself that. That's fine, right? But the reality is, good leaders don't have to remind people that they're the leader. People know their leader by how they serve. And the very last thing that I want to share with you is that I had a mentor in my life. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcast or Spotify, you're not going to be able to see it. But if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see it. I've got both of my thumbs up, right? And I'm kind of rotating them back and forth. And a mentor in my life said this, is that good leaders from the front look like shepherds, right? So if we talk about shepherds, right? Shepherds that lead sheep, right? From the front, they look like shepherds. But from the back, they look like sheep. What does that mean? Well, that means that they are really good at leading, but then they're also really good about looking like followers. In other words, they know how to serve. They know how to take direction. They know how to submit to other people and other people's wants and desires and hopes and needs and put them before their own. They know how to be a sheep. They know how to be a follower, because the reality is that the person that people follow are typically good followers themselves. So from the front, you look like a shepherd. From the back, from the front, you look like sheep. From the back, you look like a shepherd, right? However it is, right? You can both be a leader and you can be a follower. That's what it means to be a servant leader. So this is the only leadership, I am convinced, this is the only leadership model you will ever need. And that's changing your company from a right side up pyramid to an upside down, and that you wake up every day, and rather than ask, how can I get my team to do what I want them to do? How can I get them to achieve goals and go after things? I think that's the wrong question. I think the best question to ask every morning is, how do I serve my team really well today? How do I fulfill a need? How do I train them to be better at what they do? How can I fulfill a need in their personal life that would help their mind focus on the job ahead? I think if you did that, if you truly went in and you said, how can I serve those under my employee, that they truly would take care of your business for you. And now, rather than you have a bunch of employees who kind of serve your customers, but they're really looking after themselves, if they believe that they had a boss, they had a coach, they had an owner who cared about them, they would then be free to care about you and to care about your business and your vision and your dreams. And I will tell you, from doing this for the last few years, I am convinced it is the only leadership model I will ever use. It is the only leadership model I need, and it'll fit into any organizational structure, any operating system. It'll fit into EOS. It'll fit into coaching path. It'll fit into anything, because it's not a system. It's a way of leadership. And I believe it's the only one you will ever need. All right. So that's it for episode number 25 of To the Front. Thank you so much for joining me. I think this is a really important episode. Share it around. We'd be grateful if you would follow us, like us. Again, most of our streams and views are coming from people that are not currently our followers or like our podcast. So please do that. Get the word out, because To the Front are really our tools for tomorrow's top agents, top business owners. And we believe that if you put these things into place, you will be better at all of it. So I can't wait till episode number 26. We're going to bring on some more great guests who will inspire you, who will help you to do what you do better. Until then, go lead your business, your family, your agency with courage, and lead it for something bigger than this world provides. Until next time, take care.